I'm so fed up of the double standards on all of this. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Muslims have been killed in the last 12 years by Bashar al-Assad and other Muslims in the civil war in Syria. There's no one on the streets of Sydney or Melbourne. There's no one on the streets of London. We have seen hundreds of thousands of people killed in the last decade in Yemen, Muslims being killed. There's no one on the streets of Melbourne. Nobody is standing outside the Sydney Opera House calling gas the Hutu, or gas the Houthi, gas the Shia, gas the... Nobody's marching for the dead Muslims in Yemen. Their co-religionists, we're always told about, care so much about their co-religionists, don't give a damn about their co-religionists. They really don't. Muslims do not love other Muslims. They have no love for them. They have no love for the Palestinian peoples. None. If they had any, the Jordanians would have taken in the West Bank Palestinians, the Egyptians would have taken in the territory they used to run, the Gaza, and own the Gaza, and they would have taken in the Palestinians from the Gaza. Why have the Egyptians made sure that not one Palestinian is allowed to leave Gaza? Why do they make sure that their border wall is tough as anything? What do they mind? One thing: Jews living. Jews living and Jews winning. It hits them deep in their soul, in their psyche. It's an ancient, ancient hatred. Perhaps the most ancient among the monotheisms. And the deepest and the ugliest, the nastiest, and the one that has been least addressed. And we've imported it. As we sit here, roughly the same population of Gaza is being forcibly moved by the government of Pakistan. Almost 2 million Muslims are being moved by the Pakistani authorities into Afghanistan. Okay, we have a very large Pakistani community here in the UK. If their country of origin can do that, why can't we? If it comes to that, if it has to come to that.
Well, Douglas Murray making some statements out here that I think are going to put him in some hot water. I think they already have. But I have to address some of the points that Douglas made. And on some of the points, I do agree with him. On some of the other points, I think he's using hyperbole. And if he were asked, he would probably take back his position, maybe a few steps, a few degrees down. But the first part, when he's talking about that there are Muslims all around the world that are being persecuted in the proxy wars that he was talking about, Muslims that are being murdered, Muslims that were a part of the war in Yemen, Muslims in Pakistan, Muslims in India. Why is it that there's never any protests around the world? How come you don't see any big protests in London for those Muslims? Or like you said, in Sydney, or in anywhere else in Australia, or in London, or Western European countries, or America, or Canada, or whatever? Why is it? Why is it only for the Palestinian Muslims for whatever reason? Because is because of the Jewish component. I'll tell you what, if the Palestinians were in a location where the Jewish people were not, where it wasn't Israel, and it was some other ethnicity or another population group, there would not be this huge outcry among the Muslim population to basically, be behind the Palestinians. It just wouldn't occur. And when Douglas made a point where he said that, Muslims do not care about Muslims, I think he was that'd be like anybody saying, most Christians don't care about Christians because of maybe Christians are being persecuted in some part of the world, and you don't hear about that. They only hear about the Christians that are persecuting in another part of the world, right? Or for any ethnicity or any religious entity. So I think he was using hyperbole there. But in one effect, I do agree that I don't think most of the Muslims, like you said, they care that much about the Palestinian plight. Now, they do come out there, they do march or whatever, but it's mostly the Palestinians that are doing it. You don't see these kind of marches for the Palestinians in Jeddah, in Mecca, in Medina. You don't see these happening in Indonesia, in Malaysia, Pakistan, in Muslim majority countries. Where are they? And I'll go one step further on and basically say with Douglas Murray, most of the Muslims, they don't care about the Chinese Muslims. Why is that? Because it's another ethnic, it's the Uyghur Muslims, it's another ethnicity, another nationality. And when he was talking about, Pakistan moving 2 million, Muslims out, Afghanis, and basically trying to push them back into Afghanistan or move them out, this was absolutely true. Imran Khan, who everybody thought was an unbelievable savior for the country, and he did some things, but he also wanted, basically, they were rounding up when the Chinese told Imran Khan, you have got Chinese dissidents, Chinese Muslims, Chinese citizens that have left China, have gone to Pakistan. We need them back. You've got to round them up and send them back to us. In Pakistan, they complied. Imran Khan's government did comply, did send back thousands of Uyghur Muslims back to China because of the close relationship and friendship that, Beijing and Islamabad have. Everybody knows it, but you know what? Mum's a word. Toss the key out. That's exactly what was going on, folks. So, as Douglas says, if they can push him out and they're a Muslim country, he's bringing up the thing. Well, it's never going to happen, folks. That's not going to happen, and it can't happen, and it shouldn't happen. But Douglas he's bringing that up and saying, well, if they can do it, could we do that? Let's hear some more from Douglas.
Why does nobody notice this? Why is nobody saying this is an appalling war crime by the Pakistani government? Well, only because there are so many Pakistani politicians and others in the UK and other countries who have a deep connection to their country of origin and would never want to see it looked at in a bad way. They will not criticize that. They haven't said a word about that. No, I think that if you are zooming in on Israel, lambasting Israel, and are basically not bothered with everything else in the world, you're not motivated by anything other than being anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, of course. And it just has to be said. I mean, I've said this so many times that I tire myself with it, but it's necessary to say anti-Semitism is a shapeshifter. It's a shape-shifting virus. It can come from anywhere. At times in the past, it was the case that people didn't like Jews because they were seen to be a different religion and strange and different, and so they were hated for their religion. Then after the wars of religion, you couldn't hate anyone for their religion, so people started to hate the Jews for their race. Then after the Holocaust, you couldn't hate people because of their race anymore, so people hated the Jews because of their nation. On and on.
So another interesting conversation there with Douglas Murray. He never disappoints. He really doesn't. He brings together what he wants to talk about, usually pretty spot on with answering the questions that are asked of him. I don't see him obfuscating much at all. And like him, don't like him, hate him, don't hate him, think he's a racist, not a racist, think he's a bigot, don't think he's a bigot. Whatever your opinions are of Douglas Murray, there are very few people in the world of his mind thinking about the things, at least bring them up for thought. And that's perfectly fine. I, as a conservative, want to bring up subject matter all the time. Talking about policy, talking about politics, talking about religion, talking about culture, talking about, where these things continue to collide and where they don't collide. I think politics is in everything. I think anything that you bring up, you can bring up that there's a political aspect to it, especially what's happening in today's world. All Douglas basically is doing is the questions that a lot of people are maybe afraid to ask or don't want to ask, he's asking. That's a question that all of us should be asking, whether we're on the right or the left. Then debate and discuss and go from there. Anyways, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasser Sheikh Show. I've been your host, Dr. Nasser. If you haven't done so already and we've earned a subscription from you, we'd certainly love you to subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow us. You know what to do. In the meantime, take a look at our video links there above and below. And I'll leave you with my final thought, which is always, when you're right, and when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.